What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Dr. BeeWell. I'm your host, Steve Ivanovsky. Today, we got an extra special treat for everybody. The first tandem podcast that we're doing, which is really fucking cool. We have two of the best growers in Maine. That's facts. That's by awards. That's by awards won. These gentlemen have been cultivating since 2000. Have been cultivating in Maine since 2016. I believe that's right.
17?
I'd say in business 18, but probably
cultivating in Maine since 2017. Giddy up, right. Yep, and crushing it and doing it in a different way. Before that, they were farming, learning how to incorporate this practice into that. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about it. So today, I want to welcome the two members of Skunkfoot Farms, Scott and Dave. Welcome, guys.
Hey, man.
Hello.
How's everything going?
Doing well.
Yeah, being well?
Being well, sure.
I love it.
Be as good. Good and well, yeah.
Good and well, man. I love it.
Got up this morning. That's good. We're doing well.
I know that we said it in our little edit session, but Scott, that head of hair, man, is fucking incredible. It is unreal.
You're hilarious.
I can't help it.
Right
man.
back to. Don't be jealous. You're doing fine.
I got it going on too.
You do.
Yeah, I'm holding on.
For a little baby, you're doing good.
Exactly. Not bad.
Keep the lighting, guys. Job simple. I'll just keep my hat on. Thanks.
We're not talking about hair with Dave. We're good.
No, giddy up, man.
Maybe you should rub some rosemary on your head.
Dude, right? You should rub some rosemary on your head. It works.
Pharmacist is telling you to.
It works, man. It works phenomenal, and it's there's studies out there. It's 1-to-1 to minoxidil.
No hair, and then all of a sudden you had hair, and we could be like, see, it works.
Right. I know. Well, I'll show you. There are pictures of me with like less hair,
really?
And thinner hair for
True?
sure. Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'll get them to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Giddy up.
Even to him, I'm good.
I'm sending them to you,
good.
Scott. I'm just teasing.
I'm rocking the gray hair now.
Dude, well, that's do you want to know what I say to people? I say, I just want to keep it because I want to be the silver fox. You know?
Right.
I want to look like this. I want to show people to have that beard, that unbelievable look.
Strive for, man.
Yes, exactly.
If you start growing the beard now, you might get here.
Yeah, I know. I can't. I'm 32, still can't connect, but we're getting closer.
Right, just keep trying.
We're getting there.
Gotta let it get a little longer.
Yeah, right. Okay, longer. Exactly. Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. It's always the commit. You know, you got to get past the awkward stage, right? That's how it goes.
Silver fox energy, you know.
You gotta have the silver.
You have it or you don't.
Right, either have it or you don't. Right. I think I do. You know, I've always been an old soul. You know, that's for certain. So tell me a little bit about your guys. You know, first off, let's talk about how's Nikan.
Nikan was cool. It was it's interesting to get back. I think when we were there that one time we went just to look for seeds, like maybe 5-6 years ago. I think it's interesting how it changes through your perspective or what you're doing in time.
Why we were there versus
we went once just to be like, I gotta go see these guys. I have to go get these seeds, and then we left. Where this time it was a little more like we have to actually talk to all these people. Where maybe someone like a chain of custody or like a seed to sale software company might not have been anything to you as a home grower. But now you have, a grow and a dispensary and you do wholesale and you have different things to manage. All of a sudden, you're looking at these tools as something you can use, So I think it's like you go from a shovel to a excavator.
So you guys have been smoking weed forever?
Yeah, sure.
Cool, Yeah. So for me, I was like high school, I started experimenting more with alcohol first, and then I started to weed was a little taboo because I liked I thought it was like energy, and then I was like I like to smoke later on, like end of the night type of deal. But then I did like to smoke, I thought it was like cool because it would like make me get creative and think differently. So I would then then college came and I started to smoke probably a little bit more. And as college went along, smoked more and more. Yeah. And now it's like, I don't drink at all. And I obviously I smoke. And it's just like, it's such a helpful thing that I've found so helpful in my life. And it's like, but I don't have the same perspective as like the traditional like stoner, you know, that because I was I was never that, you know, I was never you know, I
Right,
was
right.
always kind of, if I was doing it, it was more like secretive. It wasn't a part of my identity. Like
Yes.
even now, I'm just coming to terms with it that like I'm a pharmacist and like I'm saying this stuff and like this is okay. Like it's okay to do this, Steve, because you believe in it because it really, you know, really has helped you and millions of other people. So you know you should be talking about it. But
It definitely works. I mean, you know, it's whether it be for addiction or, you know, cancer or whatever. There's all kinds of different ways that people are using cannabis for medicine.
Even just
Uh,
as a lubricant for life, you know, I
Right,
think
right.
where it's like, I think that's Seth Rogen, where I said something recently. I think I caught it, and I'm like, oh, I'll remember this stupid celebrity thing. But he's like, I'm grumpy, and I'm like, yeah, I get that. I can feel that, you know. And he's like, but this, like you wouldn't want to deal with me if I couldn't just smoke weed whenever I wanted to,
right.
you know, like the just
There's a
moving
lot of
things
people
along
like
in a
that.
day, you know, like, and it's, you know, to that degree, I think it's interesting where you're like, you know, I'm like, I don't know if anyone can tell I'm high or not, or if I like, you know what I mean? But it's just like whether it's oral hand fixation, something to like, you know, keep you occupied. I think it also like think about the way people use stimuli or like pain or something as a like you hear about maybe like an athlete like putting a little like staple in their belt so that like when they tie their belt tight enough it like pinches them in a spot and it like is uncomfortable, but like having that little thing off makes them perform better because their mind's a little bit like having to stay focused. And so I wondered if what's to some degree if that's like a little bit at play, you know, or if you're just like I'm making excuses so I can smoke weed whenever I want, but whatever, you know.
Right, whatever. No, that's
I'm like, good luck.
good luck. Well, I mean, that's the whole thing is if you're able to, you know, to live a successful life and it's helping you
Right.
be a better person, like that's the whole thing is like we haven't lived in a time like this before. So, you know, like maybe we have way back when, you know, but from our recorded history, you know, what we know of.
Right. No,
Yeah.
even like at our age, having peers who are maybe in like the psychiatric or like the mental wellness sort of space, they're like, there's so many more people using these things now. I'm like, well, I think maybe they're just telling you. And we do have more access. So it is more access and they're more forthcoming.
Well, it's not so hidden anymore.
And
'Cause
but
when
and
I
also
grew
it's
up,
like I'm like I get it. Like not every young person like it does do things. I remember having a kid in high school who just they were gonna probably be schizophrenic anyway, but like sitting and smoking a joint on that bench with those people that one night was the thing that triggered it, and whether it was going to happen or not, here he is with it. Everyone
Yeah.
else that walked away from that same experience, just normal life.
Yeah, right.
Um,
There's not without risk. You know,
yeah.
it's definitely not. You know, there's definitely counterindications. You know,
And people
for
want to
sure.
mitigate risk and all this stuff. And I can't say that cannabis wasn't at some point a detractant from me doing better. But I think that's also other things, you know what I mean? And also, I think at that point, then the self discovery and, talk about getting into like psychedelics and stuff. I think there's a lot of usefulness in these spaces that maybe it's not like an everyday thing, but it's like, has a way of giving yourself a way through a healing or
Yeah,
through a
dude.
discovery or through
Yes.
something, so.
Yes, yes, yes. Like that's what we're talking about. Like, imagine a medicine for that you can take for depression. That's PRN as needed.
Right.
That's what PRN means. Is that's like instead of taking the SSRI every single day or the SNRI every single day, like you can actually take a drug that you can take and have an experience that you can heal yourself and you
Right.
can have create different pathways in your brain where you're creating a new brain where you're creating new neurochemicals, new neural pathways from an experience where the psilocybin, the ketamine, whatever is gone from your system, and 4 weeks later you're still benefiting. It's special stuff that's going on right now.
Years later.
Years later,
'Cause
exactly.
I don't think I've eaten much psychedelics in a long time, and
And you still feel the benefits.
you learn a lot.
Because
You learn a lot.
because the perspective
you're
change.
talking about the physical, the passageways that are created, and we can like record that. We can look at pictures and see that there are more, but like what's happening in those new spaces. So I think that's the other half is that
Yeah, right.
there's a continued
You're changing perspective. That's
right.
that's what's so
there's
great
a
about the
continued
medicine.
action because of the pathways. Yeah.
Yeah, you open up the pathway, and it you can go back to old thinking. That is true for sure. But a lot of times, that pathway is opened up, and then you're a completely new person. I mean, 100%.
It's part of you.
It's part of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Your
that's
perspective has been altered.
yeah.
And so now I think we get to watch this this time period where instead of being like, I remember it was the first person said microdosing, and I'm like, you mean you didn't eat enough? And they're like, no, it's like cool at this thing. I'm like, oh, I thought like the eighth was like what you ate, And
Yeah, that's right.
like,
That's what.
you
Yeah,
mean you could not like,
we talk about
have
it quite a
ego
bit.
death and see like God and all this stuff. Like you can just a little bit,
Right.
What do they call that? Macro dosing?
Yeah, macro dosing. It's
That's
the
the
only
new
thing that
term. I'm like, that's just. I thought that's what you did.
right.
But-
Yeah. The
just to see if you could do it again the next day.
Yeah, right. So that it was saying Cypress Hill that who's at NECAN, and NECAN everybody is New England Cannabis. It's one of the largest cannabis events in the country. It's like a trade show. We all get together. It's really cool. This is actually my first time going. It was awesome. But we got to go see Cypress Hill, which is really cool. And BeeWell, who's one of the members of Cypress Hill. He calls microdosing, moderate dosing, and then the melt. That's what he says. The melt.
That's hilarious.
It's funny. So like when you're actually you're really out there, and I think that all three of those have benefits for sure.
Yes.
And it's cool that normally I love that you bring it up right away. Because normally this is something that I bring up at the end of the show. When we start talking about psychedelics, and people are everybody's into it. Everyone understands the benefits from it. And everyone sees that there needs to be a safe way forward. And we have a podcast with Rebecca Simmons, who is a person who's becoming licensed in this space, and which is completely novel. And so that's going to be really cool to have to share that conversation with everybody as well, because like access is important. Like we're talking about with cannabis, it's great that we have access. And that's why Maine is a great place, because it allows for easy access that way to patients. But we just need, proper research, proper everything to make sure that it's safe, but also making sure that everybody gets it and that it's not being excluded from certain populations, because that could definitely exist. What? So you grew up in did you grow up in do you have the 70s experience? Did you get through some of that?
I graduated high school in the mid-'80s, 87.
Okay.
So
Okay. I don't know how old people. Yeah, that would have been.
I'm 54.
Yeah. So people who grew up in the 70s now are like 70 or 60.
Yeah, they'd be in their 60s.
Well, you
Okay.
came of age, yeah.
I mean, a teenager. I was in the 80s.
You're a teenager
high
in the
school was
80s,
in
but
the
you're
80s.
right. But you still. So your parents were the people of the 70s.
My
Or they
dad
were
was
older?
born in 39.
Oh dang. So yeah, right. Never mind.
So,
No way. So
yeah.
different.
But
Okay.
they're not quite beatniks.
Right.
So they're before the beatniks, but not,
Yeah.
I don't really know what generation to call them.
Right.
But also, I think we all identify so much more now to whatever like little social demographic we identify to it with. So where I'm like, was everyone just a square or a hippie? Like what I mean?
Well, I mean, I graduated high school from the prep school with wearing the collar and
Okay. Cool.
shirt tucked in, and went to Syracuse, and the bus came by, and I followed the Grateful Dead right out the door.
Oh my gosh.
And
So cool.
Yeah, not for my schooling, but
No, definitely not for your schooling, but for your life, for who you are as a human being now, right?
Between the
And it finds its way back,
I did go back to school, and I ended up back in art school, and would be in school today because it's just fun and easy. And,
Oh hell yeah, 100%. Yeah,
if I didn't have to have a job,
Yeah.
school's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I plan to get some more education in my life for sure, and like that's what we're always trying to do is if you're not educating yourself, you're not living, man. And you can do that through school. That's
Sure.
a great way to do it. But there's also other great
Lots of
ways to do it. And just you'd mentioned something, and I just want to say this, like one as a tribute to you and everything, because it's incredible that you're here with us today. Because everybody, Scott lost his dad last night. Literally last night, and he's still here with us today. So just love you, man.
Right on.
Thank you. I just met you, but I love you so much, and like you're incredible. I'm losing my mom, and I know we talked about it a little bit before, but we're here for you, and we can't. You just your strength by being here. I hope everybody feels that, and
Thank you.
yeah, and honor to the guy who was born in 1939, who raised a pretty cool dude. He still accepted the guy who was, sorry to fuck you up, man. I love you. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Okay, giddy up. Giddy up. And that's the thing is it's a beautiful thing that we're here today, and I love you. He's proud. We're proud. Giddy up.
Right on. It's like
You
waves.
take the time, brother. It's like waves, dude. It's last night, dude, and we're here for you, 100%. Anything you need.
All right, fire up the big TV in here.
That's it, baby. That's it, man. That's it. And and it's
It's funny. I went down this week to visit with my father, and the cognitive abilities aren't there. But the first day I got there, I got eyes. I got the squinty little eyeballs. And I said to him, so sorry that I smell like weed. And he made the best, he was like, making a face at me. So it was
that is awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is really fucking cool, man.
But I'm glad I went yesterday. I was happy to have went down for 2 days, and I'm glad I got to spend his last day with him, and I got some time alone. And I honor him. You think you're stronger than you are, you can handle it. It's really surreal that you'll never hear someone's voice again. But
yeah, you won't hear it in person, but we can. It lives within you, for sure, and it never goes away, And I'm so impressed by you guys, because I was just thinking for certain, hey, when I got the news, the other day, I said, podcast that's the last priority, that's the last priority, and then, when you guys showed up, it actually kind of goes to show how much these guys care about what they're doing, and how much they care about growing, and that's and cultivating and really pushing that forward. That's the journey that we're here to talk about a little bit today. So I got to talk about the following the Grateful Dead. We got to. How did you get here? So you're a kid, say you go to prep school kid, got to Syracuse, saw the Grateful Dead, and said peace.
I got a .075 my freshman year.
Maybe not that yes, goodbye, but
I mean, I went back to classes a couple.
Yeah.
I think I saw 75.
Who's the relationship?
I think I saw 75 shows my freshman year, and that was enough to be like,
if only they had a degree in that at that time.
Imagine, right? Exactly.
Now they're like,
my teachers were not.
History is Grateful Dead. You're like, I fucking lived it. Don't I get an honorary degree?
Right? Like, come on, 75 shows my freshman year.
But my high school teachers were always like, well, if you can do the work and pass the test without going to class, why do you have to go to class?
Yeah, but you got a point. You got a .075
because I didn't go because of attendance
or communicate. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then I went to graduate school and had to be a teacher, and then I was a high school teacher. So perspective, I understand attendance now.
It comes full circle, like you were saying.
I had to go get the .075, spend the $30,000 for Syracuse, get arrested, the whole thing. Follow the Grateful Dead around, have a great old time, and learn from it.
Did you get arrested, then follow the Grateful Dead, or you follow the Grateful Dead, then get arrested?
No, I'll follow the Grateful Dead.
While following the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And that kind of changed things for you.
Not really.
Do you want to talk about it or no?
So sure, I don't care.
What did you get arrested for?
I was charged with possession of a controlled substance to the 5th degree because I had a vial of liquid acid and a big ball of hash, which they chucked in the woods.
Yeah.
Which was fine, and they tested the acid and they said it was weak. I said hallelujah.
Okay, giddy up. That's a giddy up, baby.
But I'm like, they just threw your social equity out the window into the woods.
Right.
And I'm like, if you said hash on your thing, and then controlled substance still is.
Right.
But it's funny because I'm like, well, that you would have been like the shoe-in for any cannabis thing now with that.
Right. Yeah.
It sucked us some time, but.
Yeah, but it's like the time would have probably served some time in jail.
Only $30,000 later.
$30,000, right?
But I didn't have to do any time for a vial of liquid acid, so I can't really complain.
Right.
Because I know plenty of people. I did see a sign on the wall, so they took us into the barracks, and you're buckled to the table, and your friend, and it's on the other side of the buckle. So,
Yeah.
you're like, and on the wall it said State Police Syracuse 109, Deadhead 0. Oh, I was livid. So the next day when my lawyer went with me there, it wasn't there. I was like,
Yeah, they take all that down.
Wow.
because they were profiling. I mean,
It's trophies.
I had gotten, you like this one, driving from Syracuse to Rochester on the thruway, and the kid that was driving got all nervous because there's cops everywhere because they're profiling. And, the Grateful Dead are in town. The circus is coming through. And they're just pulling people over. Well, he pulled into the rest stop. Wasn't like a rest stop, but it was a rest stop, like a pull off kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a cop in the exit. So he goes to leave. And so he's like, I don't want to drive. I'm like, I'll drive. Meanwhile, I'm in a skirt. And so I hop out of the car, hop in the front seat. And the white Bronco we were driving had temporary tags on it. Pull up to the cop, and he just sits there. And finally, he moves out of our way, go past him, and, whatever. Didn't do anything wrong. And he pulled me over immediately, like 10 more cars. Like, great. So they walk up, and my stuff was all up in my bag, but there was 2 bottles of tequila, and no one was 21.
Oh, man.
Like, oh, that's a great reason to go through your whole car. You got temporary tags, and you got a couple stickers on your car.
Yeah. So I gotcha.
So 30 grand later.
That's brutal. Wearing a skirt.
Damn,
it's
comfortable, man. Have you tried it?
Oh, giddy up. You know I have.
Wave that flag.
Wave it, baby. Giddy up. Yeah. I love it.
Hair down to here,
Oh, you know it. I'm a free spirit.
And they like that. We're locking you up in that skirt.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm like, no, you're not. I got underwear on. I'm taking it off.
Yeah,
right.
Good for you. Good for you. It's good for them because they were trying to just, like I said, profile you, make you feel bad. I'm glad that you were able to, preserve some of your dignity there. They want to steal all of it from you.
It was the way of the world. Nancy Reagan and the war on drugs talk about time period.
Yeah, that's
what's graduating high school, and that's what was going on.
Right now we're talking about people who are doing LSD as medicine.
Or yeah.
Right. And not that it isn't. I think that there's, we're going to find out the application. We got to do some work.
Recreational or medicine, I think it's kind of blends together. When doing something recreationally is also medicinal.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think that there's certain settings with certain people, and for certain people, giddy up. There's certain people who, yes, you, me. I think that that's the case. Yeah, we can take our recreational settings and they can turn them medicinal. I think some people need to learn how to do that, and they need to be helped along to be taught how to do that.
I just went for the straight experiment. Let's
Yeah.
Little this, little that, and see how you...
Yeah, me and you, that's the giddy up, right? See how it goes, and whoo-hoo-hoo.
I won't do that again.
That's part of it, right? Like, getting through it and knowing, like, okay, I'm not going to die. I'm actually going to be able to get through this.
Don't take that little red pill after you've taken that hit LSD. It's not a good idea.
Right, yeah, exactly. Know what you're taking, everybody. Know exactly the amount that you're taking to the milligram. Not the gram, milligram, if you can do it, for sure. But just be precise in your dosing, with psilocybin. Just be careful of what you're taking. Make sure it's being sourced appropriately. It's definitely stuff to be concerned about. You definitely don't want to take the vial of acid and the red pill.
No, I don't recommend that. Regina gave it to me, my friend's mom, and she was like an old biker.
Oh goodness, giddy up. Yeah, I bet, man.
She was a fun time, but she's like, "Oh, this will make you feel great." Don't recommend it to most.
Well, I wonder what the red pill is.
Yeah. It was probably morphine or something of that sort.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Just, cool. On top of the amount of LSD I had in my system, it was probably not the right mixture.
Right, yeah.
Not going to bed.
Yeah. Oh, no, I definitely didn't go to bed. I wandered around the mountain town that I was in for hours.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I talked to the animals out there in the woods. And
yeah, love it.
Yeah, it was all happening. It was good.
I love it. What, Dave... What about you? Let's before we get into the cannabis, the psilocybin, your LSD, your experience with it. You have some crazy stories.
I mean, definitely, whether they're crazy or just what was going on inside of me or whatever. But it was, I mean, I think just like cannabis, there was curiosities.
Curiosity. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I like alcohol wasn't a curiosity, like pills and all that stuff. I'm like, this is different. You get to see people. You know what I mean? Like I just never. It wasn't attractive or whatever.
Yeah, it didn't attract you, right?
But then I think because of society in the last bunch of years before, me coming of age, all of these things are still there in the ether. You know what I mean? Like you haven't gotten rid of all these substances. There are people, and when you look at who are sort of the ones that stand out in society, you're like, there's okay, beyond just being like, I'm not going to die from smoking pot. It's the like, well, why are these people smarter than all y'all? You know, and so I think now, like especially with cannabis and psychedelics coming into the medical space, they're trying to figure out how much and for who these things like are appropriate. And I think we all just out of curiosity dove into these things and found benefit somewhere in the silver lining, you know. And so it's interesting watching it happen because of that, you know.
Yeah.
But
And kind of to see what goes forward with it. And, I kind of hope it goes the same way.
oh yeah, no, and I remember again like that summer after high school graduation and going to shows and some the local podunk cop catching my buddy and I drinking and smoking a joint after a concert one night, and my truck was like my sanctuary when you're a kid.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, for sure.
and so I had like mushrooms in there too, and I remember later they're parading all that stuff in front of you and all this, and the detective guy's like, I remember in college these kids down the hall from me made mushroom tea, and I don't know, they were like acting weird for a while, and it was I'm like sitting there just thinking like all the shit they're trying to mount in front of you, and you're about to go to college, we can take it all away, all that stuff. I'm sitting there
Yeah.
thinking like this dude doesn't like. I'm just imagining the perspective of like the alien people down the hall in this room that are all doing these things that are bad, and they were being weird, and I don't know.
No, that was you?
What?
That was you?
That wasn't me. I'm talking about like this.
Your feeling of you were
Yeah.
watching.
This is this guy's perspective
Right.
of these people in this situation.
Yeah, and you're a kid and he's just putting this on you. And that's
Well, but it was kind of just like, oh, you're just like, there's a lot of fear in this.
so you knew that he was lying right off?
No,
Like,
it wasn't.
'cause
He wasn't lying. He was
He actually
afraid.
thought that he was afraid,
The
right?
thing he was watching was
You're
making him
right.
afraid for them and
You're
what was going
right.
to happen and all this stuff. And
Yeah,
I feel like I was like, wow, like there's a membrane I'm willing to break through that people aren't.
right.
And so I think there's like they're like, what happens when society has access to psychoactive substances? Like
I think we're finding out right now.
because the only situation they have in their head is like, the Russians trying to dose your drinking water,
Right.
and the like, pandemics ensues and all this stuff, and people are going crazy and eating each other. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
whatever your worst fear is, that's what it is. And I'm like, so
Yeah, it's not that,
yeah, ridding ourselves of that perversion. But no, it was always a curiosity. Definitely found myself in spaces where I was, giving it up to the,
Yeah.
to see what happens when it came out the end. And, lots of good things too, having conversations with people you know how to have conversations with.
Yeah, for sure.
Finding ways to then broach things that you couldn't, So there's tons of benefit.
Yeah. No, I can't agree more. There's tons of benefit to it.
And lots of fun.
And tons of fun, exactly. And that's there's like we talk about that a lot. Like it's about people want to use it as medicine and it's helping them heal and get better from something. That's a giddy up. And if they're going out and they're having a blast and going to a show, that's a giddy up.
Right.
It goes both ways.
But that also is medicine. That's like you're going to the show, you're relaxing.
Oh,
all of that is part of the same,
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
right.
just
But
another person's perspective because none of us have the same.
And
some
we hold
people
it to
feel-
alcohol.
Some people is what like is the way that most people perceive it. I think though is that when you're taking medicine, you're sick. You're and so like that is. So that's why I say it's like 'cause some people, they have sickness and they're taking this as a medicine and it's helping them. And and then there's, like me and you who are going out and we're using it as a medicine as well because we're using it and then having this experience and we know that it's a medicine for us. But maybe, you know what? We're all sick. That's what it is. And so, yeah, so when we're going out and getting that, maybe maybe not, but I think that we all could, we all get, if we're going out and we're having that experience, especially in this world where it's pulling us present, that's what it's really
and
about.
our society doesn't deal with nuance as well.
Right.
Where, like when Prohibition was happening in San Francisco, legalized alcohol for medicinal properties, it was like a way to have a card so you can get the alcohol you wanted and you weren't in trouble.
Right.
And when we figured that out with herb, I'm sorry, but that's the way we did it. Like,
yeah.
When when you're standing in front of a state house saying legalization, no one of us cared which way we got there. It was like, as long as I could figure out how I could be cool, that was cool enough. And then, oh shit, it actually has medical functions. And you know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of nuance now where we have to spread the definition. It's not purely about legality because we're making headway in other ways, so it's kind of that like, yeah, like it was a guise, it was reality, it was a way to like sort of put a wedge in and start to make more space. But like here we are now, we haven't been able to get rid of it because it's obvious that there are benefits. So how do we just get rid of the guys?
Yeah, yeah, right. What's the right terminology? What do we call it? How do we
Well,
figure that
yeah,
out? And
and even with recreational and decriminalization and stuff, they can't figure out how to get out of the way of themselves.
right. How
So
how do
it's
you mean on that? Like,
how to just like, does anyone think at all how an onion gets to market?
no.
There aren't checks and balances and tags and things and who's
Yep.
going to tax when and excise where.
Right.
And they're like, wait, this has a value. We see it. It's not just because we made a drug war that caused a change in the supply and the demand. Heavens no, there's a demand and, we have to get our part of it.
Right.
And so now it's like, well, how do we get it through in a way that spreads money out and then also takes from the right places, but like isn't, it's just silly. And it's
Yeah,
just
the process is really, really
it's creating way more
cumbersome.
headaches,
Yeah,
right?
it's super cumbersome.
And it's an inability for
You guys are going through that. And you're learning that now because you guys are medical growers,
every day.
which medical grows in Maine. I mean, there's not as much, there's not as much regulation as there is in adult use, and
Right,
it's a
right.
it's a lot it's a lot easier. And but you guys are going through that process because you're opening up. You have a New Jersey license.
Right. We have
Almost.
yeah.
Okay.
We're waiting for the state to come back with the finalized. You don't have your license yet. You'll get that the day you start growing plants, but we'll give you this okay that says that you could at least maybe go start building a building.
Yeah, it's the
So,
preliminary stuff.
Eventually, hopefully, we'll be in the rec space.
Right.
Choosing New Jersey just for the the demographic of customer base and states around, and we're both sort of that mid-Atlantic region as far as home. So it's kind of like, yeah, going where the people were.
Well, that and their licensing
Seems to be smart and
seems to be smart and it
not
seems
expensive.
attainable. It's like a place like Connecticut was a raffle.
Yeah.
So you spend all this money, you put your license in, and it's a raffle. Like,
Yeah.
wait, I thought I just had to get my ducks in line and make sure I have the township, the land, the money,
Right.
and then I can move forward. And so Jersey's been, for some reason we found an opportunity that on land in a space and townships, it's all in. They like us. They've been helping us, and
Yeah, I love to hear it. Let's get into that a little bit because I want to talk about your guys' process of growing because I know it's quite different than how the standard grow out there, and that's kind of what the process that you're trying to bring to the market out there and what you've already brought to the market here in
Right.
Maine. So why don't you just like explain your background a little bit because it was pretty cool how you when we had talked previously just about how you had talked about where you came from in aquaponic farming and that's where you guys that's your background a little bit. So
Right. Well, I mean, even initially, I think as Scott and I were sort of working together, living together, hanging out. When it came to cannabis, it was
how'd you guys meet?
through Glass World. We're both glass artists. Went to the
Cool.
same school, Temple University, Tyler School of Art. Scott was working at a high school, and I had friends that were also like doing nighttime classes at the high school.
we have 12 years apart in our schooling in our college. So
Right.
I went to Tyler 12 years before Dave.
But
Okay.
but the art scene, the glass scene, was very big in Philadelphia, and because of that, the way glass works is very traditional, and when you're established, you need help, and so you get assistance, and you pull assistance as cheaply as you can at first, and so you think about the way like someone comes in inexperienced into an experienced space. And so there was a lot like as a younger person, I'm like, where can I go blow glass more? Where can I go experience more work? Whatever. And so, you're following those lines through to where people are still functional in glass. And so like, Scott and I had a mutual friend that, he was working at the school at that point loosely and working or living on a building on campus. And so I think that was like the formal introduction. But I think, from then it was like, music and herb and friend scene. And you go to any concert, you're going to run into like a list of 12, 15 people, and so like it sort of became going there. And then I think I was living in Reading at the time, working at my glass studio, RKS Studios, and that closed in the recession. And I'd been like sort of funding myself on my hobby grow and figuring out what the next step was. And so I think I had been broken into in Reading, and I was trying to move like back to the Philly bubble and be around friends a little bit more since the studio wasn't there anymore. And so we just, we had like a a hobby garden.
And I had a house, and so I said, "Come live at that." I'm like, I'm living here alone in a big old house, and I'm like, "You might as well come live here." And
cool.
We're doing the same thing, growing the same kind of methods, and trying to figure out what's
growing cannabis.
Grown cannabis in the basement.
Yeah, cool.
Blowing glass for
Yeah, blowing glass, growing cannabis illegally at this point, right? Yeah, giddy up. I love it. Okay,
and,
oh geez.
And I think what the first question sort of was, well, like, you're like, it's always different every time we get it from wherever's coming from. Sometimes it's great, and sometimes it sucks, and sometimes it's in the middle. How do we be on that great side always?
So we started experimenting with different types of methodologies of growing and side by side. So you could do it. It's great. He could do it. It's great. But, like in-house, done by us, we were able to like
comparative analysis.
Yeah.
We,
scientists
as the end consumers, appreciate more.
Right.
And so you're like, this bottle was $100 less. This bottle was $200 more. I don't care. That's on a price sheet. We'll figure out the cost of whatever later.
Right.
What was better?
What works?
And then so we just, so it sort of went organic constantly.
Yeah. Well, that's been our constant thing, though, is like constantly going, okay, is it better?
You're still going more organic, going more organic.
It's also constantly not worrying about, I don't care about the money. The money's not the issue. Like, it will pay.
It will in the end, but I think...
until recently, we've never really had the numbers on paper.
Right.
And now that it's legal and you're allowed to be like, okay, let's put it down. Like, what does it cost? And working through that.
Right. Yeah.
So that was informative, I think, coming to Maine and opening businesses and, becoming, like, we're being the cannabis refugees in a way, and having a state that like allows for you to, get your residency and go.
So that's what you guys decided. You were in Philadelphia.
There's some steps between. We were in Woodstock at this point.
Oh yeah, right. You went to New York. You were in New York, right? Yeah.
Western Catskills at first, because
it was that. But that was also, how do we get into the middle of? I think it was also headspace, and just like living in Philadelphia is a lot of fun. We have a lot of good friends there and good circles.
Yeah.
It's you could easily like, what did I do this month besides go to work and go have fun, which is great. But I was like feeling the need to progress as a human.
Yeah, I love it.
And I think, and Scott had other things going on in his life where he was like, to not be around people that I know and see all the time, or be out of circles, or find what the new space is. So like we looked at a map, where's the biggest like chunk of green that had nothing going on in it was, Margaretville, New York.
We were also able to make glass as our living.
Yes.
Live in the middle of nowhere. So if we need to go make some glass, we go make some glass. And
we were like renting at Corning, and
when you guys say make some glass, just so I can like blow
Italian style utilitarian, where I've never made a pipe.
Never made a pipe. Wow, so just real glass.
I've only ever made what we
a bond.
I'd call it like a Gandalf pipe, where I'd like just take a string, like a thin tube, and just in time make it.
In hot glass, real quick.
And then just use a little torch, and not like one of the torches people use to make like nice artwork, and just barely make, and that was the pipe you just keep in the studio until it broke.
Okay. And then
you just stick it up in the rafter, go smoke under the hood.
Yeah.
And then, when it died, it died.
Cool. I love it. But
that was like the closest I've ever.
The professor who from Tyler, he was the guy that founded the program and whatnot. No pipes. It was like,
cool.
This is traditional Italian style glassware.
Not even Italian, just soft glass.
Right.
This is about art that has nothing to do with, like, form and function is secondary. Color application is just like, that's just, lipstick on a pig.
Right.
It was about creating form.
It was about the form of the glass.
It was about
really
thinking.
Cool. That was his style.
It was about thinking and making art that is conceptually based. It
transcends material.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
So if forced hand, he really likes our weed now.
Yeah, well, of course.
He loves our weed now.
And
I love that.
He's also, I think there was an explosion happening in time, like when I was there especially. And so it was cool. Like, I'm like, look at the studio. My people graduated around me, and what they're doing in life. And it's cool because there are glass blowers in soft glass, but also pipe makers that are collected in the Corning Museum now. They're all their friends that were blowing glass got the reverberations of the energy and the shit you learn in art school. And so that went further. And even just like brewers, restaurateurs, people writing books or doing, there's just like, it was a really cool energy that came from that group.
Yeah, cool.
So it's like, I don't know if,
kind of brought you guys together. The universe, that energy kind of carried you guys into this. Like obviously that shared background is
keeps the room small. I think you keep coming back into culture, whether it's lifestyle or herb or glass art, whatever, you see the same commonality.
Right.
There are people that kind of float in those same spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just,
somehow we've been able to be partners for 12, 15 years now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And not kill each other and keep trying to expand and figure out how to communicate through, we all have our difficult days where you're not the person you don't want to talk to me on certain days.
Right.
And, figuring out how to get through that. And realistically, the business has been like, we have the same ethos, the same work ethic. So,
different ways of looking at life, and things. So, so coming at it one way and
the shared experience, but also the completely different perspectives and the completely different lived lives and coming at it. It's beautiful.
So, but that sort of, even like you've touched on aquaponics, I think that was a further down the rabbit hole of that. I was probably bored.
Right. Tell them how you got there.
You didn't have to grow too much weed to, go on vacation and like pay your bills and stuff back then.
Right.
And so it was like a luxury, especially on the East Coast, to be at such a smaller scale and like being able to like sort of exist. But I'm looking at all this like hydroponic stuff in a store, and I'm like, this was all made like NASA engineers and Corning, scientists figuring out ways to grow food in other places. And here we're growing weed from it, but like, what is the dollar and cents to make this all function? And then it was like, well, how do we do this organically? Is that possible? And so at that time, YouTube and Facebook was actually worthwhile to look for information on.
Yeah.
And I started just dissecting, and we're talking about, how we come at our nutrients and how much is diesel going to cost in 10, 15 years. And when is this paradigm shift going to happen in the way we think about the way our lives and the way industry happens to allow for us to continue to live on the planet and also not, go poor and hungry and all these things.
Yeah, really forward thinking by you guys.
And it's nuts because now I'm like, all right, well, maybe we didn't create a successful business in it, but we learned a lot because it was a great opportunity to understand agricultural businesses, what it really costs to grow food and what the risk really is.
Yeah, that's kind of what you said to me is you really learned through that, like the business of farming. Like you learned how you need, how lean you really needed to be. So like when you came into the operation here, you weren't somebody who just, maybe had I love these people and they're unbelievable and they grow great weed as well. But like some people may be running a construction business or doing something different or, you guys were already growing weed and were also farming at the same time. So you had learned how to, run a farming business. I think that there's merit to that.
It's also at that time, I think again, I took some like Cornell continuing education courses and they were like, just jamming it in your head, identifying with your customer, creating a product that is repeatable that they then will come back to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, we could have gone to Wegmans and just basically took all of the lettuce we ever produced each week and they would have just shoved it through their machines and put it into Wegmans boxes with the rest of the lettuce and they would have given us a number. The number would fluctuate with the market and how much came in that week and what the quality was. But I think like the farmer sees that as like, I'm always going to get what I need for my product because I'll just go there and they'll take it.
Right.
Whereas on the other side, they're like, if I create a brand that's recognizable, that has a story, that has a quality inside that they want to have again, then you're going to develop a repeat and a reason why they'll pay a little bit more or something of that sort.
Yeah, so that's how you guys were kind of starting to develop the brand back then already.
Right,
Skunkfoot lettuce, baby.
Well, Freshies Aquaponics.
Yes.
Freshies Aquaponics. Okay.
And we aimed at New York City. We're 90 minutes away, and we're like we have to get into these farmers markets. We can go to Park Slope and blah, blah, but
we sold everything within 10 miles of the farm.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
As quick as we could harvest it, 400 pounds of lettuce.
I love it. That's
every
so
week.
cool.
And,
Every week.
that's
400 pounds of lettuce a week.
The Hudson Valley has a lot of
Yeah,
restaurants and a lot of people. And so it was great to find customers, whether it be chefs or small markets that got it.
Right.
And they can offer that. And then they're like, oh, this didn't sit on a truck for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like, even though it was a little more expensive and it was, like.
It lasted for them, and they'd pull it out of the refrigerator and it's still like, this didn't go bad. Or,
yeah.
And I mean, just talking about aquaponics, the flavor, lettuce actually has flavor.
Oh, it's better, you're saying.
It has, and every different type of lettuce has a different flavor.
Cool.
And so if you can increase the bricks levels, the
biodiversity of what and I think that's where, again, we kind of came back to, whether it's like the sugars are a representation of the plant's ability to uptake a variety of nutrients. And so because the bioavailability was high, the plant's Brix levels were high, which leads to like a longer shelf life and better flavor.
Okay.
And again, I think it's like, I came back from Amsterdam once, going with friends. And, as soon as you get off the train and you're like, going to the first coffee shop.
Right.
And I was talking to my friend. I'm like, I think the water must taste different here. And we're smoking weed at a different place. I'm like, there's a flavor. I just can't, like, it's not good, but there's this like off thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And we went to the cannabis college and the lady's like, I bet you this is the problem. Here's, try this. And I'm like, this tastes like weed. Like there's not this thing back there. And she's like, well, that's the salt, the inorganic nutrients. They're like pumping it so hard. You're just tasting these off flavors.
In the cannabis, you're saying?
Cannabis, right.
Okay.
And so I've begun to realize that I'm very sensitive to those things.
Yeah,
and like
cool.
I'll name the nutrient line you're using if you're growing in that method.
You can smoke it and name the nutrient.
I can smell it walking in your house. Or in your facility. I was something like, it smells like GNC, or it smells like Miracle Grow.
House Garden, or
but I mean, it just has this other thing.
Yeah, right.
You're not tasting the weed. Like the flavor you like or got used to, and the strain that works for your brain is actually these off things.
Right.
So it's been interesting, even like going back to old strains from those days, and then reapplying to organics and like the techniques we're using now, where you're almost like this tastes like that. But like, there's other things there too, or
that you weren't able to taste before.
Right.
Or it's things they had a flavor, like, in the late 80s, did sour diesel taste like, what I remember, what my friends remember, is it what I have? And I'm like, I'm not sure, but so I've been tempted to go buy some General Hydroponics, the green, the pink, and the brown stuff, and like I did when I was 18, and see if it brings that memory, or see if it,
right.
See if I, treat it poorly and see if it grows well,
Right. Yeah. I'd be curious to see about that as well. For sure.
But yeah, no,
but that's led us. I mean, aquaponics led us to people going, well, you guys are in New York and you're growing weed in your basement, which is basically, how we existed.
Yep.
You let us pay some bills. It paid for itself, basically.
Yep.
The fish paid for themselves. It was really fun having
It was like the salary of a part-time job for each of us.
Yeah.
And it probably was about the
nice
part-time
to show. Nice to show a little bit of income back, then as well.
And it's just, and again, like, things weren't the way they are now in a way.
Right.
Like it took me a long time to figure out how to I don't think my family knew I was like growing weed until 6 months after I'd already moved to Maine and opened a business growing cannabis.
That's so funny, yeah.
And so, but it's like that process was it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Of just, and this is the world we come from, so it's like, it's funny talking to youngsters and stuff. And they're like, I'm just going to go do this. I'm like,
good luck.
Or not good luck, but like, yes, good luck. But also like, oh, I wish it was, couldn't it just be that easy?
Yeah, right. I wish it was that easy, right?
Right.
100%. That's how it always goes. There's, you guys get it, running the businesses.
But it's, and all that stuff was ethos. It was telling your customers why and the reasons, and then showing them in the box.
Yeah.
And so again, like coming back to cannabis, it was like,
well, the product was selling itself. Like the quality of the lettuces was selling.
Things were too. But I think,
then we translated that to cannabis.
Right. No, I think the farm and the way you bring a product out, the choice to like control packaging and want to like control freshness and, all these things. It's
developing brands as well as not only, the product needs to sell itself. So I don't even have to say much about the flower that we have. I'm really confident in the quality
Right.
that it is.
It doesn't slice. It doesn't julienne fries. It just, and this is the thing is it's like, I think everything else becomes this, trying to create like all the moving plates and distractions from what's like inside, flashy packaging and all this stuff. You're like, well, what's in the jar?
Right.
And so we try to just like be minimal so that it's like you're concentrating, like as soon as the jar opens, that's the loud part, not the picture on the cover.
Right.
And so
Mm-hmm.
just, I don't know, just choices and
So
methodology
we
is
moved
fun.
from
And
New York to move up here because we could have caregiving businesses and grow flower and not.
Right. You guys had already, most caregivers, like you said, back in the day, they had to live together if they wanted to do more plants. But you guys had already been doing that for so long. So it was so natural for you. That's pretty cool.
My wife allowed us all to stay in the same house.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Which makes it so that we can both be caregivers in the same property.
Yep.
So we moved here, we rented for a while.
Yep.
And then eventually we found a house that had a great property, gave us where we are now. Gave us the ability to have.
You guys are growing in like four season greenhouse.
just one season. Well, we do 2 cycles with a light deprivation greenhouse.
Okay.
So basically from like end of April, May to whenever the second round is done, probably around November 1st.
Okay. So because you have your indoor grow and then you have your outdoor grow that you do. Have you done that consistently? The outdoor grow?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And is that what but you're trying to get a facility going that's indoor in New Jersey.
In New Jersey, we're going to be growing in what's called sun chambers.
Yeah. Okay.
These
That's
are
right.
outside.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to talk about.
That's the outside greenhouse.
Yeah.
And
The 4 season greenhouse growing.
One of the things we were, again, like going back to that.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely put a picture of that up on the link so everyone can take a look at what these these are.
I can get you those pictures. But we have a bunch.
do.
Those are just little tiny hoop houses that what do we call it? They have some control, so we can control humidity and we control exhaust air and we can have light depth.
Okay.
These don't have cooling, so that's they grow great flower.
Okay, and so that's what you're going to try to do in New Jersey.
Well, to a degree. And I think what our greenhouses now are a good representation of is like what you need to grow and what you need to have and control. Or, I look at them as like choppers. You can go to like Harley Davidson and buy a motorcycle with the freaking tassels on the things and all the little, compartments and all this stuff. Do you need any of that?
Cool.
And so you think about like that biker going down the road in a chopper. It looks like it shouldn't even operate.
Right.
And you can see everything making it function. Like that's all you need. And this is all these are.
Right.
And it's because it's
fair.
Partially budget, it's partially spatial constraints. And, we knew they were going to be a stepping stone. Because in reality, you never have enough. You want to grow all this space, but you only have enough money or resources for a smaller one. And so, especially like coming into a property and trying to build up a business, we're looking at indoor as being an immediate. I can do it in the winter.
Yep.
We have amazing sun where we live, and the climate's perfect. So we can do outdoor, but we can also have greenhouses and put a little bit more investment into the property. And getting a little more control, so we have a better product in the end than just on the hill sun grown.
Right. Yeah.
Which is what we did our first season on the properties.
Right.
We had 60 plants out on the hillside.
Right, which is fine if you're going to process it, or if you're just yes and no.
Flower outdoor from a flower market was fine back then.
It was and it was banging.
Right, yeah, it's great. No, I like outdoor flower. I think that it's really good. But like you said, if you can control more and you're trying to control those processes, it's better to hone it in.
And so now here we are, a few years later, where we have strains that if you didn't tell anyone, you wouldn't know if it was greenhouse or indoor. The greenhouse itself is tuned to where we know how to make the environment right. So it's going to create good quality products. And again, like back to those strains, like last summer, we were saying, 100% all concentrates. We're not selling any flower, trimming any flower from these greenhouses. And we still did quite a bit. But I look at it now, having gone through a few pheno selections and running different things through the seasons, we now have stuff that's just going to shine so well. I'm almost excited that like everything's in place. Farming isn't like overnight. So it's great to have that like, all right, like 3 seasons in, the 4th season now is so set up and people are waiting for those products to come out. So it's great. It feels good.
And that was our next step to moving into soil beds from pots.
Right, right. And again, like
Okay.
we kind of do things in incremental. Like I never, again, back to old cannabis when you can get a lot more for what the effort went in. I knew people that would change lights, change facilities, sizing and spacing and all this stuff every time they grew because they could and they didn't know what they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're kind of like, all right, well, we're doing organics, we're doing a lot of liquid feeds. How do we go more towards amending and cut the bill down? How do we like stop running through soil and reuse the soil? And then, slowly, I think we all started getting more confident with these beds.
Yeah.
And understanding how to like test the soil,
Mitigate it and make sure that's ready to go. And
right. And so now we're foregoing potentially more faster yielding garden situations for products that come out in the end with a better quality, maybe a little bit less of a yield.
Okay.
But in reality, like we're not even looking at yield anymore because you know what's going to work for the product and
Right.
like what
People want.
we know it's the light, it's not the plant completely.
Right.
So yield is adjusted on that. But if something's sold through, it's like it doesn't matter what the yield is, it's gone. If you like grew 3 pounds on a light, you're so stoked, but it's still sitting there 2 months later. What good does that do you?
Yeah. Right.
So there's been a couple like sort of changes that happen in the way you look at your space and what you're producing and how much you're producing and all that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then now it's like on the rosin world. We're all kind of coming through to all the hashes and that market's sort of becoming enough of a percentage in what you should be growing.
Well, that's pretty cool because like not many people would think that that hash is something. That was kind of old school. That people don't really before it's starting to make a revolution. And that's what I want to kind of talk about with you guys. But it's it was for a while because we could for the longest time we wanted to be able to distill cannabis, and then finally we were able to do it. So we're like, okay, let's do this. And then we started to figure out all these different processing techniques. Resin, rosin, all these different things that are out there. And then there's 1,000 more, that I'm not naming currently. But it comes back to
not just hash coming around.
The hash. It comes back to the hash. So so yeah, exactly. So we have all these, now it comes back, and now it's like hash is becoming popular again, and it's like incredible. And like let's talk about that a little bit because you guys are definitely you guys are hash guys, right?
Well, when it's the what is hash?
Yeah. Well, what is hash?
When I was a kid, it was coming from Morocco and Nepal, and it was came with a gold stamp on it from Afghanistan in the 80s, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what I remember as hash. And then all of a sudden, everyone's calling all this concentrate hash. I was like, wait. Whether, you're either calling any kind of extract hash. And I get it a little more now that I've seen some of the solventless processes and the non-solventless processes and how they're, it's coming back as their cannabinoids. You can see the crystals and kind of have the same kind of feel. But that a lot of the newer stuff is really new to me.
Yeah.
I'm learning a ton about it. And
I just think the like culture is so divorced. I think because of when, like, say 9/11. I don't know if that's the day, but after 9/11, it became a lot more difficult to bring products into the country. And I think hash culture was lost. It existed definitely through Beasters and a lot of like the Canadian flower coming into the country, but I
original,
still,
like the Afghani hash was Nancy
and
Reagan and Ronald Reagan and the war on drugs. And where are we selling weapons to the Middle East, to Nicaragua? And where was the hash coming from? And how are these outside forces affecting the U.S. politics and what came into
Okay, but I want you guys to, for the listeners, I want you guys to tell them like what is hash.
Okay. I think hash is a way of describing a concentrated THC product from cannabis in a method that is regional with a plant selection and characteristics that is inherent to that terroir and those people. So I think like sticking cannabis in a tube and extracting with butane is a concentration, but it isn't speaking to a place or a people or a method.
Cool.
Same thing with rosin. Rosin's great, but I think that's where concentrates are and hashish is. And again, hashish is like a very um, secular word or a word from a certain group of people. It doesn't necessarily describe what someone in Morocco or someone in Pakistan or anywhere, Libya, Lebanon, um, where does hash come from along that Silk Road. But again, and I think it's a time period where there's not only like a method of consuming, but there's the way in which it got to market, which is why it was in that form.
Cool.
I think there's a little more of like of beyond a flavor or a nationality or something. I think there's.
Do you know how they were making it back then? Do you guys know how
depends on region.
Well, yeah, like how Morocco, for instance, the stuff that Scott was first introduced to. Do you know how they were making it in Morocco?
Yeah, well, Morocco is like largely large plantation grown. So they're doing a field grown crop. They're harvesting it and drying it in bundles, and then once it's like bone dry, they're then going to like break down the material on like big cloth sheets, tarps, and things like that, and then it goes into like a round scythe, surrounded in bags, and they'll beat it. And so this was like a technique they created.
They take the whole flower, and that's what they do with. Oh, cool.
Right.
So the hash is the collection of all the all the heads of the THC.
Yeah, the trichomes.
Right,
yeah,
trichomes.
Yeah, the trichomes. Yeah.
So it's collecting that, and so it's a mechanical way to separate that off the plant.
Is to
physically beat it off the plant.
Now, and where I think hash production to some degree came more from like India and that region.
Okay.
And so I think that beating method was more of like a change from what they were doing like in Afghanistan, where it gets cold enough that the separation is much easier. Where they'll cut the plant and stack it out in the field and let it dry in the sun. But also, as soon as it gets snowed on for the first time, that's when they go to make the rosin, the resin. They separate the resin into hashish. And so it's like done on screens in a larger way, and they're being more lofty with it and getting the plant material to separate with the wind coming through the room, and all the trichomes fall into a much more loose, silken sieve, and they bring that through and stack it up, and they have like different ways that they're compressing it or beating it or doing whatever. In Morocco, I think because the climate's a bit different, the beating was necessary to kind of have a little more action on the plant material to separate it.
Okay, because they didn't have the snow.
Just their way of of doing it.
And Charas?
Charas is an Indian, usually like a mountain region technique where you're going to go through the field while they're live, usually in the morning before the sun's come up. And you're basically just going to like take your hands and do a gentle massaging of the whole flower. And so it's a process. Sometimes it's done during harvest, where they'll actually take all the leaves off, rub the plant down, and then put it over in a pile to dry. And then every time they do this, the layer on their hands gets thicker and thicker to the point where they can collect all that. So it's a fresh live collection.
Cool.
In like a mechanical way,
Yeah, right.
And that then becomes this like goopy, they call it Charas.
Looks like it's usually like they
I was introduced to it as finger hash because I remember I had a friend who lived down the hall from me in college who was Pakistani.
Yeah.
When he'd go home, he'd bring back finger hash. And because you'd get it in these cellophane wrappers that looked like a Tootsie Roll.
Okay.
And it was like about the size of a finger.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was black and gooey and tarry, and it was full melt.
Right. Okay.
The size of that finger was determined by how big someone's hand was. So if it was done by a kid, it was smaller. If it was done by a man's hand, it was much bigger.
Wow, so that's how dependent. So you wanted to get your charzu. Charas. You wanted to get Charas from a man, then from a man with big hands.
Well, yeah, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
What does big hands mean? Like big Charas, I guess.
Big hands means big Charas, exactly.
And then so the methods, change a little bit different places, but a lot of it's like within those lines. The ice water extraction didn't really come until probably like the 90s, late 80s, 90s. Whether that was Bubble Man in BC or that was happening other places and no one talked about
Frenchy
it.
cannoli.
Well, that's also just, again, another person that sort of is looking back at, when I saw Frenchie doing what he does, I'm like, well, he's just being nice about making his bubble hash. Like I've always had bubble bags the first time I went to Amsterdam.
Right.
So, like we always made some of that, but it never was enough material to go out. And it wasn't until I met kids from California, especially, that had parents that were growing. They were sort of like becoming the master hashins or the people who were going to create rosin eventually, because they had a plant they could look at and not have to worry about growing it, but try to like play with the molecule after.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's like another layer that happened, where you're not just interested in the raw product, but you're like manipulating that raw product to make a better concentration or
That was like
pure.
where it's first starting around here. You're saying was not, or obviously like stuff locally. You're saying that's where it's starting around here, just with the California kids.
Yeah, I mean, as far as this continent goes,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, anywhere you had guys growing, they probably had bubble bags as soon as they heard about it the first time.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And it wasn't necessarily something you did, because I knew a lot of guys that threw their trim away because it was just a waste of time. What am I going to do with this trim?
You understand the bubble bags, what he's talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But explain it.
So
it's not. Yeah.
It's taking the whole plant as you harvest it and sticking it in the freezer, and then using the cold water to separate the trichomes off of the plant, filtering it through a bag and collecting it. And that's bubble hash.
The bags are different size microns, so you can collect different size heads and different ones. And they called bubble bags because when you're mixing it up, like a froth will be created on top. That's what I always understood. As
I thought that it was because it bubbled when you melted the.
Oh yeah, bubble head. Yeah, that's true. The full melt
Bubbles.
Okay.
Bubble bags.
I don't know.
There's another one.
So yeah, you're taking it out of the freezer. You're putting it in cold water.
Yeah.
And then you're filtering it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a washing machine, or you're rowing it for a period of time, maybe a half an hour, and keeping it mixing, getting those heads to fall off, and then you're trying to be as careful as you can to not get green matter or plant matter. You're trying to separate all your carbon matter out as best you can.
Yeah.
So you're left with just the trichome heads, and collect that, and you can dry it and smoke it, or you can then.
How do you guys dry it?
Air or freeze dryers are the new things.
Yeah.
But again, it's all stuff you don't really. This is like where technology has taken, especially their rosin process.
Right. Well, back in the day, they just used to let it sit. They weren't, when they first started doing this, they just let it chill.
Right. Well, I think you're starting to talk about purity and trying to retain as many terpenes as you possibly can.
Yep.
To have the highest cannabinoid level, but also the highest terpene levels, and not losing that to the environment because it's super volatile.
But I will note that some of the top contenders this year in the what's this competition called?
Legends of Hash.
The Legends of Hash, and also at the Ego Clash, there were top 3 placements with air dried material. So you can do the bubbles, the fresh frozen, go through that process and then air dry it and get a quality product just like you would out of freeze dryers. So there's always, exceptions to the rule.
Right.
But I think that sort of hash rosin world kept trying to like sliver the sliver.
It makes it faster to use a freeze dryer.
A really interesting process and a really interesting product,
It's a little bit faster to use a freeze dryer than to allow things to just evaporate. Yes. So I think that's the idea that people, how do I maximize my time? Okay, I can wash this many, pounds of fresh flour. Okay, now I have all this rosin that I could have trays sitting everywhere.
Right.
Or stick them in a freeze dryer. And
this is where our world's colliding right now, where I think we generally have a perspective of the farmer where we're like, say, in the regenerative organic community, and we're talking about air drying, we're talking about sun grown, we're talking about things that give that demographic a leg up on all the other competition. But it's also talking about low cost ways of bringing product to market. And so you're going to do a little more work, but you're going to like be able to, get the same product quality as the guy who has this expensive machine.
Right.
And so, and then what I noticed this year at NECAN was in the discussions, all these big guys who are like, we have the machine to do this and the machine to do that. And we have workers to, they're talking about how to maximize all these low cost things because they're finding.
So the farmers, it's great. I had a great conversation with the gentleman at NECAN. This kid, he grew up as an agriculture kid. He's from Idaho, where they, school gets, you don't have to go to school if you got to do the potatoes,
Right.
it was just a giddy up, and he was telling me that, that cannabis has, and also speaking to the regulation, that it's, the regulation is, that's who's going to help with the regulation is these big farmers are going to come in and say, why are you guys making these people do all this stuff? Like, we've been doing this with onions, and we've been doing this with potatoes, and we've been doing this with this for so long. Like, chill a little bit on these people. Like, yeah, I get it. It's psychoactive, so you got to regulate it a little bit more. But you don't need to, you don't need to make it as cost intensive for them to grow. From the tracking standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what he said. And he said that there's just so many processes that that big scale farming will be able to apply to to cannabis, and we haven't even scratched the surface of it yet.
Right. Right.
It's wild. It's wild to think about, like, how everyone now, we think like, oh, we're like growing cannabis, we figured it out. It's like, no, man. Like, the past 10 years, like we've our knowledge has quadrupled in how we, maybe, quintupled, whatever. Like, in what, like,
Right.
just because people are legally growing and everyone's doing it, everyone's open, you can openly share knowledge. It's like,
we're still learning.
and we're
still taking classes. We're still,
okay, cool. Yeah. I love it.
following up. I mean, most recently took a Jadam class.
It's not new stuff. It's like reapplying sort of old things or bringing sort of. There's been a split, I feel like, in the way this has happened, where instead of going like high technology, high, understanding, and, like some of the overburdens, because you're going to place some of these technologies on, and so that's more service fees and more hardware to buy, but you can move through fields faster. You can have, all this data collection happen without you lifting a finger. So there's like function for it. It's the scale that the operators are working in now. And then again, like the Jadam thing, I feel like it's divorcing myself from that high agro tech back to like using what's around you.
The Jadam, tell us about that, though.
So Jadam is sort of an extension from Korean natural farming. Basically, a man, Master Cho, sort of developed ways of using biology and inputs from around their farms and around the forest to create farming inputs at low cost. And it's also about bringing biodiversity back into your soil and your farm so that a lot of these processes begin to happen on their own. You're not tilling. Tilling is sort of disrupting the soil. You might get a benefit for a year or two but it's really like the death of that biology.
Yeah, the no-till. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like no-till in a field has sort of like a new way of growing cover crops and putting those crops back into the earth and letting them compost, become bioavailable again. So like Jadam is a bit of a simplification of that. Not so much processes and fermenting and stuff, but taking just plant material from around or different inputs and creating liquid nutrients and microbiologic inoculants to just sort of, again, like build the soil and the humus you have. And, by creating, I don't know, it's like less, it's just buying less.
Yeah.
Using less of like the food system or the nutrient system that is sort of made to be just like the pills and everything only work as long as like this time period. You have nitrogen and phosphate and potassium, but like only for this crop cycle.
Right.
And now you have to go back.
Yeah. Right. You got to go. You got to keep going to the grow store.
Right.
You got to keep going
buy
there.
Buy more soil, buy more nutrients.
Yeah, you got to use it again. You got to use the first. So a lot of this stuff is just teaching you to be more economical what you're doing.
Yeah, it's better.
Banking these nutrients instead of just like adding what you need now.
Yeah.
And
banking them how? Like through the biological inoculates that you're doing, you're saying?
Well, it's banking them by putting the organic matter back in the soil so the biology can decompose that material and sort of, if you think about a plant, it can't go anywhere. It grows where it lives.
Yeah.
That seed came from a fruit or flower from its predecessor generation that couldn't go anywhere either. Chances are the nutrients it's using to grow every year is the same nutrients that its previous generation consumed and then relinquished when it died. And so in a natural processes, plants don't need anything out there in the world because they're just reconsuming what was consumed before them.
Yeah.
And the biology around them is geared towards doing that.
Right. Like the fungus is,
Right.
is good at breaking that down so that it can go back into the
So the
soil.
availability becomes much higher. So as we farm for what we call extragates, so if you're making a vegetable, you're growing cannabis, if you're taking something out of that field and consuming it and not replenishing your waste back in that field, the nutrients are lost. So that's why that nutrient consumption is needed every year in that farming zone.
Right. Okay.
So by taking the residue of the plants, the leaves, the root zone, the stems, all of that stuff, and letting it compost where it grew, we're basically putting those nutrients back in a form that the plant has already figured out how to digest.
Oh, so that's really what you guys are doing. So
that's a lot of what the jadam is taking a local, taking your leaf soil from the forest floor and using that as an inoculant to break down the plant matter you grew. And so in cannabis, when we go into flower and you're vegetating your plants, they go into what we used to call the stretch, but in your transition time period, and they double, triple, quadruple in size. If you are looking for tight buds or trying to change the way your end product is going to be, there's a lot of defoliation and waste that comes.
Yeah, right.
A lot of people remove that from the farm because they're like, oh, a dead leaf might have mold on it.
Yeah, right.
Everything has mold on it.
Yeah.
If you put it into your soil bed and it breaks down,
cool.
the nitrogen you paid for goes right back in.
Right back in. Giddy up.
And so what we're finding is our nutrient bill becomes less every successful harvest. We're still putting in what we know the plant needs, but what we're left with is a balanced soil that anything could really grow in.
Right.
But if you're going to then grow a product that has this vigor or has a certain look or a content, we know we can feed this plant. The cannabis plant is like a race car. It'll use whatever you give it. And so you find that balance between what it needs, what you know you can give it to see an economic level of result.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it's balancing all that constantly.
Yeah, dude, I think that's super cool that you guys are doing that. I haven't really heard of anybody who's reintroducing the plant matter back into the soil, and I just think that's fucking revolutionary. And I also think that it's beautiful that you're here on the show openly sharing it, because you told me that that's what you're trying to educate people and you're trying to help people become, smarter with their growth so that it's going to get harder out there. The margins are going to get smaller. It's been happening. Price compression is a real thing.
Right.
So, you guys, showing a model where you can grow for more economically, I think that's really great. And you're not only doing it, this is in your indoor grow.
Yes,
And
indoor greenhouses, all of it.
Everywhere, yeah. So it's plus you're doing it as cheap as possible on the, or as economically as possible. I shouldn't say as cheap as economically as possible on the outdoor. I think that's so great and has such valuable, valuable information for people.
Right. No, and it gives us real world data, in those greenhouses that only have what they need, what you can get away with. And then you start adding, you were talking about the sun chambers earlier. They're basically a greenhouse that will consume as little energy as possible, keeping it warm or cooling it off, using a lot of sort of green energy ideas that we got from aquaponics and that whole world. And it just shows you, the closer you can get to this sort of highest level of what's possible. We'll have light depth curtains, we'll have lighting for when the sun's, short in the winter, so we can make up that time. But, so you start looking at all these different things and it's this super hybrid space. I'm just excited to see what we can actually grow from it, especially putting the soil in and what that'll do a couple years after we've been that maturity, what that then builds.
Yeah, it's going to be cool to see how, the long-term growth of how you guys are thinking that way. It's just so counterintuitive to what I've, to mostly of what I've seen, going on at most medical grows that I've been a part of is let's just get bags of soil and let's put them into our big pots. And then when the crop is done, we got to throw the soil out. We trim the plant down. We take the matter from it. We throw the stems out, and that's. And then that was becoming an issue, obviously, because there's so much nutrients in this. So now you're infecting the fucking land too, that you're living on, because and you're, if you're near water, you're fucking up fish, with too much nitrogen. So it's just, I'm glad that we're having this conversation because I think it's super important.
Well, and it started, I remember in the mid 90s hearing about a couple products that Advanced Nutrients were selling in granular form being outlawed in California because they were like finding it in the river.
Right.
And it was, I remember like being at the grow shop, like I should buy this stuff because like I only have to take this one little bucket up to the woods and I can feed all these plants. And then it was like in the back of High Times, da 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 da. And I was, oh, okay, this is bigger. Like, you know what I mean?
You saw that, Dave, and I think that that's so important, and I think that that's what's like really cool about you guys is that like you saw that as a person, and like most people would, you had that thought like, oh, I can just do this. This is great. Most people would have then saw the thing at the end, the back of High Times that said this is really fucking bad and it's poisoning fish because it's ending up in the lakes and ending up in the streams in California, and they would have said, yeah, well, I'm not in California. I'm still gonna figure it out. My process will be better or whatever. They wouldn't care. They'd still put profit over everything, and like it's really cool that you said no. I'm actually gonna find a better, more sustainable way to continue doing this. And that seems like you guys just kept saying that organics.
Yeah. And then again, like just like you see, like we talked about partnership earlier and how difficult that is. You see all these partnerships happen and disappear. And, you're like, oh, how long are these guys going to work together? Same, go to the grocery every couple months, a different product line is being put right in front. And all of a sudden I'm switching over to these guys. And it's like, it went like further and further from, like now it's like Athena's, which is basically, Miracle Grow. It's Scott's, that's Miracle Grow. And all these guys just pulling off the shelf and wearing the things. And I'm like, we used to make fun of like the weed that smelled like Miracle Grow back in the day. And here you are, they gave you this easily digested schedule and you just put this here and you put that meter there. And, like that whole cardboard terp, thing that people say, it's like it's just amazing to watch how.
That's what they do with food as well. It's not just cannabis. It's like the agriculture industry grows food that has nothing. So what's going to grow
nutrients?
The biggest tomato, it's this color, it's that, but it has no flavor.
So that's so funny because like we always talk about like cannabis and how the terpenes are what's actually good for us and what we need to really helpful for us, and that's because that's what's giving it the flavor. The nutrients are the same the same in food, you're saying. So like the flavor, the more flavorful something is, maybe the better it might be for you, or the more you can actually taste the real flavor of it. I don't know, that's not the best thing to say, but
no, but I mean, you look at like if you look at nature, things that have say fruits that have high vitamin C content are generally very aromatic, lemons and limes and all that citrus, and even like something like
orange.
Yes, yeah, it's an indicative. I think the color, to a being that was developed with eyes that can see color, see different things. We have smell and we have that taste. So I think one leads to the other. It's like our cues to know what to come for and what not.
A dark green kale has great nutritional value. It's like one of those things we're drawn to because of the color as well. I don't know. It's always the flavor of some of the greens.
We know bitterness is a nutrient density.
Yeah.
That's maybe it's not sweet and appealing to us here and now, but that density, that bitterness gives you a cue as to like what it contains.
Yeah, and I like that. And I think about this quite a bit because I always go back and forth whether I want to completely. I like to taste the nodes. I specifically source oil that tastes good, that's grown from cannabis, that is that is terpenes that are going to taste good, that are going to match with the floral of the honey. Because when a person eats honey, their brain, I want that connection to be brain honey, and that's what happens when their person eats THC honey. They eat Dr. BeeWell honey. I want their brain to say, "Oh, this is Dr. BeeWell honey, and it's different, and I am going to have a different reaction in my body because of it, because it is psychoactive."
The TSOs have the flavors vary that drastically versus using a hash rosin to put into the honeys.
So a TSO is a total spectrum oil,
right? Yeah, it's like an RSO. It's basically RSO, but the people say that's
the term is going away, or whatever. But Rick Simpson's cool. We're gonna figure that out, for sure. But we got to mainstream it for sure. I think
it's proprietary for him. It's his name. And so, he's got his own product.
He's got his own product, exactly. So
I think you're just describing like how you get to the same substance. Like if you're gonna put hash rosin in,
are you gonna have more flavor though? Is what I'm wondering, or would it really?
If it's a singular strain, it would have that strain no matter what the process.
True.
But then because if you start with a flower versus starting with divorcing it of the plant matter, you just have a more individualized flavor than just that broad,
Okay.
RSO flavor, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit. It's subtle, and I want it. I think I want it to be subtle. So I think that if I did, the rosin, then I think it would be a hash rosin. I think it would be a little bit more. It'd be a little more pungent, which I wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I don't think.
No, I think that would be. I mean, a lot of people talk of the hash rosins being the more like the wine that you can buy and preserve and collect kind of thing, and and those terpenes are.
But I think in the food, it has more to do with non-solventless. Or I'm sorry, that's a double negative. It was solventless.
Well,
because in the food,
sure, but
I think you're just getting like the weed brownie flavor
versus you would get it from the hash rosin.
That's what I'm saying. Like you're just talking about the same thing.
Okay.
Because the hash rosin.
Obviously, I'm experimenting with it just like you.
Yeah,
well, I'm just saying it's like it's the like if you took hash rosin and made TSO with it, it'd be the same thing. Like they're not skipping. I think the whole buzz with using hash rosin in edibles and things like that now isn't for necessarily its ability to have a different flavor profile, but that it's a solventless product in where they would normally see distillate or you know what I mean? I think that's kind of like we don't smoke distillate. Why would I eat distillate? And so they're smoking hash rosin, they're gonna like eat hash rosin. Because I mean, I think about like bubble hash. I remember we made edibles from that once. Yeah. And it was like, get this like gritty feel on your teeth or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think I even tried making like, putting it in milk and making like a cappuccino. And it was really tasty, but there was like a tackiness on your teeth. Yeah. And I wonder if like the hash rosin wouldn't have that over like just straight hash. But I don't know that the flavor would be, if you made motor breath rosin and made motor breath,
we might have to try some experiments.
Yeah, for sure, definitely do some experiments.
It's still the same terpene, same strain, same terpene, just like how you arrived at it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's exactly. It's the same terpene, same strain. It's how you arrived at it, and it's potentially different because the process is 100%.
We argue a lot less when we're on camera or on microphone. Like, because this same conversation we'd be having at home, but we'd be talking over each other. And it's so funny because it's just, we know each other. We know what each other is saying. But, I'm like, this is funny.
Yeah, right. No, dude, 100%. And that's what's great about it is like you get in here and you get super focused. And so like, you have these conversations where it's like, oh, I'm listening and I'm going, when I leave here, I'm like, oh, wow, this is really, really great. Like, this is how I want to be. I really want to, just like have more of these conversations and do this with more people to show them how like powerful this is. That like you can have these cool, like you said, two people have this great relationship like you guys. And this is my first time doing it with two people, and it's been really awesome with you guys.
Good.
Yeah, no, awesome. For sure. And I want to one thing before we wrap up. I want to find out like what's Skunkfoot.
So Skunkfoot. So to start off, our good friend JoJo is Chief Skunkfoot.
Okay.
He's been Chief Skunkfoot since back in the day.
Okay.
My interpretation.
Another glass guy?
No, he's another deadhead.
Deadhead, okay. That's how I know him.
Yeah, cool.
His mom's Regina, the biker.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
And I think this is like a nuance. I feel like have friends and family, quote unquote, in so many places across so many spectrums because whether it's like music or herb, it's like the social network it's really interesting to look at from like, I think about like maybe a family member, like who are you hanging out with? Oh, these people I met, and where'd you meet them? Well, I had a concert somewhere once, and you're gonna go like spend a week with them? Yeah, it's gonna be a blast. They're like, do you even know them really? I'm like, I know I can hang out with them.
I know I enjoy them.
Right, and it's just that all
became family, but
love it.
I think Skunkfoot.
So JoJo.
JoJo was on lot. There's a couple different reasons that JoJo got Chief Skunkfoot. He definitely had skunky feet.
So on tour in Europe, apparently he was like evicted from a hotel because they were like, "Did you bring one pair of socks for the whole 3 weeks you're going to be here?" And the answer was yes.
Yeah.
And it was like, Skunkfoot was there, but then I always thought like he just showed up out of nowhere with weed sometimes.
He's really good at finding lot weed.
He come back and just like carrying a backpack. You're like, oh great.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I think it's a little bit of that.
A little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Dave, I think when Instagram rolled around, you were like,
well, so I always call him Chief. And
he is Chief.
Right, but like I don't know that people religiously call him Chief like I do.
No, we do. If you're not part of the Skunkfoot tribe.
Right. So I kind of felt like one day he was like, all right, Captain, like kind of gave me the like, not quit calling me chief, but like.
Yeah, giddy up, send it back a little bit.
Right. And so I was just
Camaraderie.
like Captain Skunkfoot. I like
We
that.
all had
Yeah.
Big Black gave everybody names back in the day.
Okay.
So Big Black is JoJo's cousin.
Okay.
Danny,
So
yeah.
they're all upstate New York people.
Yeah.
Who've dispersed through the
Yeah,
world.
then
You
we were
guys
all
ever
on
get
tour.
together for shows anymore?
Yeah, but what's funny is like I was out in Colorado in September.
Yep.
And was with JoJo and Black, and we had never the three of us hung out together before.
Oh, cool.
Like
I
JoJo
love that.
and I, JoJo and Scott and I, like
Danny
Yeah.
and you.
Danny and me, Danny and Scott and I, like
Yeah.
different segments because everyone's so dispersed.
Yep.
But then I was like, damn, like we've
So
never been in the room together. This is great,
Yeah, dude. So that's awesome.
That
I
crew
love
is
that.
the crew that I would, those were the family. That was the family. Going dancing at the Grateful Dead shows, and people were throwing down. And
Well, I would
know,
love to go to a show with you guys, any type of show that
let's
where we're
go.
doing some dancing.
It's fun.
I'd love to get going with it. I
you got
love
some
to.
groove going on. I saw you
Yeah, I mean, I got some groove. That's what I love to dance. It's like my favorite thing to do. It makes my soul comes out, and people feel it. They feel that I'm dancing, and they want to be a part of it, and they want to do it with me, and it's a giddy up.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Hell yeah.
Kept my mind spinning in the right direction so many times,
Yeah, exactly, man. I love
those house lights
I
come
got a
on.
pile
You're
of
like,
mushrooms
oh,
and-
cool. I'm not okay.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
dancing still. All right.
I'm just dancing, man. Just still dancing, giddying up. I learned so much about myself, through dance, like just being able to be
Body
comfortable.
movement, body awareness.
Yeah, and just being comfortable with myself in space,
I don't
and
know.
not.
People are like, I don't know how, like people who smoke weed all the time are like, I don't go to concerts. That's too many people in one spot. I'm like, how would you not feel this like amorphic flow? You know what I mean? And like,
I compare the group dynamic of a concert to pretty much everything I do. Like,
yeah.
I grew up in the Grateful Dead world, and like that music on stage is great, but it's nothing without the interaction with the audience. Making art of any sort, realistically, the audience, whether the artist intends to alter the audience's view or it just happens.
Yeah.
That transcendence of that moment is
Everyone's experiencing it together, you're saying?
that artist is feeling it just as much as I am, dancing my face off over here, like,
Oh, yeah.
drooling on myself, having a great old time. He's, on the same plane. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just
It's the
you're up here
reverberation.
watching the room, looking down because you're so high. You're like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's weird as like being a small farm. We have, it's like we are not a speck on the map. But when people appreciate what you do, just like with, all of a sudden it's like I'm influencing your psyche, your mind, your state, trying to give you things that are going to like enhance it or do whatever. But like when that comes back, it's crazy.
Yeah.
To think like, and especially when it reaches from so far.
well, we were down in any can, and one person after person comes up to you. Man, I drive all the way up there just to get that skunkfoot weed.
Oh,
You're
giddy up.
wow, cool.
Yeah, you feel it. Yeah,
I
it
own a
comes to you.
dispensary and a grow, and I drive to buy the weed I like to smoke. I'm like, but that also goes back to like, I mean, being on a lot, smoking a doobie, someone walks by, like, whoa, what the fuck is that?
Right.
Yeah, I
Right.
sell weed. Can I buy some from you? And it's
Right.
they're like, yeah, but there's a value. And it was always funny then playing that like, oh, well, but I get this over here all the time like that. And I'm like, but we know our value on this and it's different thing.
We're good.
And we're going to like show you the why. And like people get it or they don't.
Yeah.
And so when like the get it's come back, you're just like, okay, we're doing something right. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm not trying to be a stickler. We're just trying to like maintain the thing that we are like after.
Well, how do you stand out from the rest, and what makes you different? Whether you want to judge it as better or worse, or it's what makes me different, what's, going to draw you back.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
It is a business at a certain point, so you have to analyze that end of it for us.
Yeah.
It's not like trying to be like, we're the most expensive farm. Like, that's not the point.
Right.
It's just like I'm just trying to say, we're not going to say, you know what, I can buy that guy's bottle for $20 less than the other guy's bottle. That saves me $1. And then I'm going to save myself on time because I'm not going to have to do this, this, and this. So like, I'm even more hands off. Like you're describing to me how you're going to take yourself out of business.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I'm like, I'm trying to tell you all the value added along the way.
Right.
And it's
And that's what you guys are doing, man. I think
when
it's
that
great.
revelation comes back, it's just like, all right, we're not just the only ones You know, it might not be the masses. I get people have pocketbook, you know, problems and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But I'm like, you're not going to leave upset. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I'll make that $50 go a lot longer.
Yeah,
On
exactly.
a third the amount, you know?
Exactly. And that's the giddy up. And that's what, you know, you got to just let people know. And, you know, once they find you and they come back and you get that feeling, like that's, you know, that's really what makes it worth it.
Mm-hmm.
100%. Well, guys,
Thanks so much, guys.
yeah, we've been at it for, you know, for about an hour and a half or so, 2 hours almost, you know. So you guys have been fucking awesome today. Has really been great. You know, I got to have you back for sure. You know, as a
I'm sure
tandem.
we started things and didn't finish a lot of things.
100%, exactly.
Right?
So we'll have you guys back to get back into
We're good at
stuff.
talking. We got that one down.
Yeah, exactly. And we definitely want to talk about the you know, the 75 shows that, you know, that experience, 75 years, you know, in 1 year you went
Probably
to.
more than that.
And then people are
Yeah.
looking for the cooking. That's the other part. Like, well, that's the thing is there's like so many stories that lead into other stories that are like just what happened? Why did you do that? Like,
Yeah,
you're
right.
still alive or you're
Yeah.
not in jail.
Yeah.
But then it's like the recipes. Like I'm noticing, like we did a podcast a few months ago, and it was like, what was the recipe on that thing you said? You know what I mean? So it's kind of funny how you almost need like a cooking show and the like green room show.
Yeah, right.
The like conversation before, and then they're like, all right, let's sit down and make some Jadam, you know, wedding agent.
Yeah, right.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I know,
Right.
exactly.
Well,
And
that's because a lot of the Jadam stuff is like cinnamon sticks and you soak them, and then you do this and you soak them.
That's even the Korean natural farming
And that
stuff.
is what we're going to start doing, hopefully, is like, you know, getting people, you know, doing like, you know, I've had yoga teachers on, I've had, you know, yoga champions on. I go and do the yoga with them, and I, you know, I have a grower on. I go to their space and like bring my guy with me to, you know, kind of show what's going on and do something cool like that. Because I'm all about the experience, right? That's why I'm here. That's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to educate people through this experience that I'm having.
Right. And none of this stuff is what makes why, like, it's all your hands. Like your hands doing the thing that all of us have been teaching each other how to do is what makes yours.
Exactly.
So like, don't be afraid of competition. And if something's saturated and stuff, it's just saturated for other people who don't have the passion you do or don't want to put in the effort or have the vision, whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Competition just forces you to do your best. And if everybody's doing their best, we're all going to make it.
And if you're not happy with some of the people around you doing good too, like, and noting that and talking about why, none of you are going to really elevate each other, you know?
Right, exactly. And that's what you got to do. You just got to help elevate each other. And that's what we're trying to do here, help everybody be well. So, guys, it was really awesome to have you on today.
Wrap-ups last 20 minutes.
That's it. We'll keep wrapping them up, babe. We'll keep wrapping it up for sure. And that's a giddy up. But I do appreciate you so much for coming in. It's been awesome. Thank you, everybody, so
thanks
much.
for having us.
You know it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's a giddy up.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah, Jacob, my man, thank you for helping us out. Thanks for always producing the greatest podcast in the world. That's a giddy up. We got Skunkfoot Farms. Where can we find you guys?
A few stores all over Maine. We're the best thing to do to get a nice, you know, look at everything we have is to meet us, call us directly, you know, find us on Instagram.
Yeah, so where's it? What's the Instagram, Sam? What's the handle?
Instagram is Skunkfoot.Farms.
Skunkfoot at Skunkfoot.Farms.
Yeah.
And, you know, Scott is Skunkfoot Tribe, all one word. I'm Captain Skunkfoot, all one word. That's usually the easiest. We're in, you know, Sensimilla and Rugged Roo.
Right, there's our new logo.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Logo.
Okay, love it.
Yeah, baby.
Delivery services in Southern Maine. Yeah, we're kind of smothered all over. We haven't really
Hit us up on Instagram. We'll meet
Hit us
you
up on
somewhere.
Instagram. Exactly. Hit them up on Instagram. You know, at Skunkfoot Farms. You know us at Dr. BeeWell. Thanks all you guys all for joining us today. It's a giddy up.
Thank you.
Cheers.